Hi, welcome to the Applause Series. My name is Donna Fitzgerald. I am a member of the Agawam Cultural Council. We are proud to bring this series to you. If you enjoy it and would like to give a donation, any amount would do, we would appreciate that. And you can do so by visiting our website, www.agawamcc.org. Thank you. Take care. Be safe. Enjoy the show.
Good evening. Thanks so much for coming out tonight. My name is Sean Gaskell, and I will be sharing the Kora with you. The Kora usually has 21 or 22 strings, and it is native to the Mandinka people living in the countries of Gambia, Senegal, Mali, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Burkina Faso, Sierra Leone, and Cote d'Ivoire. And so most of the singing that I will do tonight is in the Mandinka language, and I will translate a lot of it to you, the words that I'll be singing. And I had the privilege of studying this instrument over the course of 3 visits to Gambia with the host family. So most of the songs that I'm going to share with you are ones that I learned directly from them. And you'll get to learn a lot about the Kora throughout the course of this program. So you get to learn about how it's built and like the materials that you use to make it and the people who typically play it and what their role is in Mandinka culture. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started here. This one is a song called Alalake, which basically talks about good work, and those who perform good work, they should be celebrated for what they've done. Alalake. Alalake, sila jomake, Kolambe, usamaile, arabado donte baila. Alalake, sila jomake, Kolambe, usamaile, arabado donte baila. Thank you. This is a folk story coming from the country of Mali called Mali Sajo. Sajo is the Mandinka word for the hippopotamus. And this is not a true story, but a folk story of a woman they say fell in love with a hippopotamus.
Ye Malisa Josa Malisa Bafulambe Malisa Josa Malisa Ye Malisa Josa Malisa Bafulambe Malisa Josa Malisa Alinga mutafe, ye mutafe, alinga mutafe, le alinga mutafe. Alinga mutafe, ye mutafe, alinga mutafe, le alinga mutafe. Ye Malisa Josa Malisa Bafulame Malisa Josa Malisa Ye Malisa Josa Malisa Bafulame Malisa Josa Malisa
Thank you. This one's called Kastumamon, and it's a modern version of a very old song called Apollo. And Apollo is a type of fabric that is used to make dresses, which women will then wear at special events like weddings and naming ceremonies for newborn children. Kastumamon.
Kastumamon, Apollo calling Sumaman, Castelie. Kastumamon, John Ben Apollo Sumaman, Castelie. Kastumamon, Apollo calling Sumaman, Castelie. Kastumamon, John Ben Apollo Sumaman, Castelie. Sumaman, Apollo calling Sumaman, Castelie. Sumaman, Apollo calling Sumaman, Castelie. Kasumaman, Apollo calling Sumaman, Castelie. Calling Sumaman, Apollo calling Sumaman, Castelie. Kastumamon, Apollo calling Sumaman, Castelie. Kastumamon, John Ben Apollo Sumaman, Castelie. Kastumamon, Apollo calling Sumaman, Castelie. Kastumamon, John Ben Apollo Sumaman, Castelie.
Thank you. So the Kora historically is 300 years old. A lot of the music that is composed on it can go back as many as 800 years to mid-13th century. And with the Kora here, we have a calabash, which is a gourd that grows very similar to a pumpkin. To use it, they have to pick it out and then cut it in half and de-seed it and take out all of the wet material that lives in there. And it gets dried in the sun for 2 weeks up to a month, just depending on the time of year that you're building it. And once you have a hollowed out calabash, you would take a wet animal skin like this one and stretch it over the open half and then nail it to the backside with upholstery tacks. 3 holes are then cut into the calabash, and 2 of those are so that the neck that I'm holding can slide through the top, down through to the bottom. And then the third hole right here is there for two very important reasons. And the first is so that sound can come out. The second is so that money can go in. And the reason that money goes into this hole, it serves a very important role in the Mandinka culture. And I'm going to get into a little bit of that later, why that is. So we have an iron ring that goes to the bottom of the neck. You just drill a hole through, put the ring through, and then you would wrap some nylon rope through the loop and then around the back of the neck. And then the anchor strings would go on to those. And the plucking strings get tied off to the anchor strings and then up to each of the individual tuning rings along the neck. And this bridge right here is actually not attached to the instrument. So if I was going to loosen all of the strings, the bridge would just come off of the instrument. There's quite a few differences between the two Koras that I have here with me. And they include the type of animal skin that's used, the wood materials, the string materials, and the tuning system. So this Kora here, I brought home from my most recent trip to Gambia in 2018, and it uses cow skin. Kano is the type of wood that's used. Fishing line are what the strings are made of. It's been most commonly used since the early 1920s, and then before that, they would use antelope hide, the skin. And then lastly, we have cowhide tuning rings, which are called konso in Mandinka. And so each string gets wrapped around about 4 or 5 times and then tied off with the regular square knots. And then to tune the strings, you physically have to move them along the neck. And by moving them up, you're putting tension on each of the strings, and that's going to raise the pitch, and vice versa if you go the other way. This one was actually built in the US, and it uses elk skin. It uses a combination of Paduk and Honduras mahogany for the wood. The strings are harp strings instead of fishing line, which give it a very different sound quality, as you will discover here shortly. And then lastly, with the tuning system, it's more like a guitar. You just have to twist each of these pegs, and the pitch will change. And it's a lot easier to tune than the other one. This one is called Tabara. This one's about 250 years old, and it's about Tabara and Jai. And the song was dedicated to her by the town that she lived in because of how much she was well respected and liked. you. This one's called Jekere, and this one follows the example of many traditional songs in that it's named after someone who held political status during the expansion of the Mandinka Empire, which started all the way back in the mid-13th century, and the expansion went all the way up until, I want to say, the mid to late 1700s. So Jula Jekere lived in the late 1700s, and he was a leader of his town in central Gambia, about, I want to say, 120 miles east of where I studied Kora. Jula Jekere. Thank you. So the people who play these instruments are what some might consider to be a part of a class system of sorts. So historically, people have been born into families that do certain things for work throughout their whole lives. And there's many crossovers as far as what that type of work is there compared to the things we have here. However, the people that play these instruments, we do not have an equivalent for that. And these people that I speak of are called griots, spelled Griots in the plural form. And a griot is literally a walking history book with 800 years worth of information. It's their cultural responsibility to know all of the history dating back to the starting of the empire. And the Kora is most culturally significant because they use it as one of the main ways for doing just that through these traditional songs. So you have songs like Judah Jekere, which are named after political leaders. You have others about people who fought in battles to help expand the empire. And furthermore, songs about the actual battles themselves. Those are just a few examples of many. People do write their own songs on Kora as well. When I was in Gambia, I would see the Kora being played at 3 types of events. One was very casual and laid back, and the other 2 were very formal. The casual event would probably happen once a month, maybe twice, inside of an extended family compound, and that's what they called it. It's where anywhere between 7 and 30 people live together. So you'd have like mom, dad, kids, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and whatnot, all living together. And then in the central part of the compound, it was very open air, if you will. So you'd look up and see the sky, and the rooms were all covered into the exterior walls. And each immediate family, each nuclear family would have like a series of rooms together. And then, so if you went to a musical gathering in a compound, you would usually see more than just a solo Kora player. It was rare to see the Kora performed solo. They would usually be accompanied by other instruments like the balafon, which is a wooden xylophone that's played with one mallet in each hand, the ngoni, which is a small lute, which is played more like a guitar, and occasionally you may have some drums, like a djembe or sabar drums. Like a djembe sits on a wooden pear-shaped frame, and sabar are kind of tall and thin. Typically, men would be the ones playing these instruments and women would sing, but within the last 15 or 20 years, at least my most recent visits to Gambia, I would say I've seen more women playing recently, which suggests kind of a shift of cultural perspective in that historically only allowed the men to play the instruments. If there was a female singer present, otherwise known as a jeli muso, she was the leader, and all of the instruments would tune to her voice to bring out the best qualities of her voice. And she would be like dictating the show and kind of calling the shots with all the singing and all the call and response that would go on between the audience. So at a naming ceremony, there was 3 parts, all right? So that was like one of the formal events where you would see this at. So during the daylight hours, they would name the child, and then they'd have a huge feast afterwards, and then the music would take place towards the later hours, sometimes going until midnight or 1 in the morning even. And so there would be a griot on a bullhorn saying praise for the newborn, for the family, just kind of bringing up well wishes. And another griot would be standing next to him, sometimes telling him what to say to the bullhorn, but then at other times, this other griot would be going back and forth between the audience to collect cash donations to then give to the parents of the child. And this would be a very communal process, this naming. So I would look out to the audience and I would see groups of 4 and 5 people talking amongst themselves, discussing what the name of this newborn child should be. And so maybe one person out of each of these groups would come up and talk with one of the griots and just give him their opinion. And so after about an hour or so of this, maybe an hour and a half, the name would be determined and announced over the bullhorn, and they would move on to a feast. And food, generally speaking, would be served in large bowls that 4 up to 8 people would sit around and share from. Eating was typically done with your right hands. You could use utensils, which were readily available. I found it easier to use my hand because just based on how the food was served. So at the bottom of these bowls, you would have cooked white rice, and then over the top you would have a sauce, like a palm oil based sauce with a variety of different spices depending on the dish. And then vegetables, some of the most common ones you would have would be carrots, cabbage, eggplants, leeks, onions, cassava, bell peppers. And then with meats, it would be either chicken or fish, usually. Occasionally you'd see beef or goat, even at a special events. So the vegetables would be served in like these large chunks. So they would like cut the cabbage into quarters and then cook it. And then like 1/4 of a cabbage would just go right on top of a bowl. Carrots might only get cut in half. So they'd be sitting there right in front of you, really large. With fish, now if they used fish, they would wrap the whole raw fish in tin foil. And my host family would set it on a grate and then cook it on the open flame. And when it was done, they just pull the whole fish out and throw it right on top of one bowl. So like the fish would literally be looking right back at you, waiting to be eaten. So it was just a lot different than how we get to experience food and food preparation here. And then the music would go on late into the evening. And so the people who played at these events usually they made their living doing a lot of these, so weddings and naming ceremonies. There were 4 members within the family that I studied with who teamed up with another griot family, a few members with them, and they would play about 3 or 4 of these events a week. And so in order to make their living, they'd really have to engage the audience, because it wasn't like a door charge where you'd pay $5 or $10 to go see an evening of music. Like you literally have to work with them, if you will. And so the way this would look is that maybe like the first or the second song in, you would have like the melody go on for like 5 or 10 minutes, because these songs would go on for a long time, like 20, 30 minutes. And then about 5 minutes in, like you'd hear some singing, and it was either the lead Kora player or the Jelly Mousseau, if one was present, the female griot. And if the song was about a particular person, they would likely be singing praise for this person, and they'd back off for a while and just let the melody resume. And then when they came back in to start singing, they'd be trying to figure out if anyone out there was a direct descendant of the very person that the song was for, who probably passed away some 100 years ago, like 200, 300, 400 years ago. And so just for a sec, let's imagine that the name of the song that they're playing at that moment is Frank Jones. So the way this interaction between the griot and the audience might look like this. The griot would probably say something to the effect of, anyone in Frank Jones' family. Back in the year, I'm just going to pick one at random here, 1582, back in the year 1582. Here are these 3 things that Frank did for the Jones lineage, and this is why it's so important for our people. And they would just like kind of improvise talking about this for like the next 5 or 10 minutes. And then at some point you would see like 3 or 4 people in the audience stand up. And you knew at that point that they were direct descendants of the very person. They were going to come up and show their respect. Because the griot literally said, anyone out there from the Jones family, like if you are a direct descendant of Frank, you must come show your respect in the form of a cash payment. And so the reason that type of monetary exchange takes place is because the people, Mandinka or one of the other various ethnic groups in Gambia or any of the other countries where the Kora is from, really value the fact that the griots are the safekeepers of their history, knowing almost 800 years worth. So a griot can literally ask for your last name and then be able to tell you about your family dating back 800 years. So the fact that they can do that means a great deal to the people, and they want to see that their culture is preserved and that the griots are financially supported for being the safekeepers. So speaking of audience participation, which happened a lot, I'm hoping that you all can help me out with this next song. This one's called Tira Makan, and it's an 800-year-old tune. And so Tira Makan helps gather some people together who would then form the very first armies to work towards empire expansion. And so there's a call and response to this song. So it's a battle song. And there's a 3-word response that I'd like you to sing along with me. The 3 Mandinka words that you'll sing translated mean, the enemy was not successful at piercing Tiramakan with a sword. So you can say all that in 3 words. So for the first part, I'd just like you to say each of the words after me, one at a time. The first word is Susa. The second word is Rejo. And the third word is the name of the song, Tiramakan. Tiramakan. Good. Now say Susa, Rejo, Tiramakan. Very good. All right. So, and when it's sung, it sounds like this. Actually, just sing it back to me. I'll sing it to you and you sing it back to me. It goes, Susare jo Tiramakan. Your turn. Susare jo Tiramakan. My turn. Susare jo Tiramakan. Susare jo Tiramakan. Excellent. That was awesome. So that's all you have to know. That's the response line. There's 3 call lines that I'll sing to lead us into that. The first bit is Muru Yebang Tiramakan, meaning the enemy tried to pierce Tiramakan with a sword. And then you respond with Susa Rejo Tiramakan. The second line, Keleke Muru Yebang Tiramakan. So Keleke is a person basically saying the sword is near. And we respond together again. And the last call line that I sing is Ifa Tiramakan, Iba Tiramakan. So it's the father and mother of Tiramakan are basically wishing him well as he enters battle. So let's try it. It goes, I'll guide you in. Muru Yebang Tiramakan. Susare jo Tiramakan, Keleke Muru Yebang Tiramakan. Susare jo Tiramakan, Iba Tiramakan, Ifa Tiramakan. Susare jo Tiramakan, Iba Tiramakan, Tiramakan. Susare jo Tiramakan. All right, that was good. So that's it, and we'll just mix it with the Kora for Tiramakan. Muru Yebang Tiramakan, Susare jo Tiramakan, Keleke Muru Yebang Tiramakan, Susare jo Tiramakan, Iba Tiramakan, Ifa Tiramakan, Susare jo Tiramakan, Ifa Tiramakan, Tiramakan, Susare jo Tiramakan. Muru Yebang Tiramakan, Susare jo Tiramakan, Keleke Muru Yebang Tiramakan, Susare jo Tiramakan, Iba Tiramakan, Tiramakan, Susare jo Tiramakan, Iba Tiramakan, Ifa Tiramakan, Susare jo Tiramakan.
bang tira makan susare jo tira makan kelle ke muru ye bang tira makan susare jo tira makan ifa tira makan susare jo tira makan iba tira makan ifa tira makan susare jo tira makan. Amuru yibang tira makan susare jo tira makan kelle ke muru yibang tira makan susare jo tira makan iba tira makan ifa tira makan susare jo tira makan iba tira makan susare jo tira makan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. That was great. This one's a love song called Nsumbu, and I learned the words to this song from my teacher's daughter. So my teacher, Moriba Kuyate, his daughter is Binta Kuyate, and she taught me this in 2018. She was 12 at the time, and she just came over and sat next to me as I was practicing this song one day. And I've never heard it sung this way before in any performance or recording. So when she was singing, I had Moriba come over and translate the Mandinka words to English, as he always does when he teaches me. So here with Nsumbu, the words to the song basically mean when you are missing one that you love, you should find them. Nsumbu. Bambal, Ndiaramole, Bambal, Ndiaramole, Bambal, Bambal, Ndiaramole, Jesus Sumugila, Ira, Ndiaramole, Bambal, Bambal, Ndiaramole, Bambal, Ndiaramole, Bambal, Ndiaramole, Jesus Sumugila, Ira, Ndiaramole, Bambal. Yeah, bambal, ndiaramole, bambal, ndiaramole, Jesus sumagila, irara, ndiaramole, bambal.
Andiamo mole bambal, andiamo mole bambal. Bamba, andiamo mole, Jesus sumgira ira andiamo mole bamba. Bamba, andiamo mole bambal, andiamo mole bamba. Andiamo mole, Jesus sumgira ira andiamo mole bamba. Yeah, bambal, andiamo mole bamba. Andiamo mole, Jesus sumgira ira andiamo mole bamba.
Thank you. So we're going to finish the night with a couple of songs that I composed myself. And the first one is called Solmada. In Mandinka, it means morning, like the time of day. And I wrote this song about 8 years ago now, when I was getting up very early in the morning for work to do trail maintenance and construction work in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which is about an hour away from where I live. Somanda. Thank you. I was introduced to the Kora in 2006, and I literally stumbled across it in a live performance for the very first time, like many of you may be doing now. And I absolutely fell in love with the sound and was determined to learn how to play. So I talked with the performer that night, whose name is Kane Mathis, and like myself, he was born and raised in the States. And I figured out he was willing to teach. I just had to figure out how to acquire a Kora, which was not an easy task. Once I was able to, a few months later, I started going up to his place for lessons about once every couple of months. And after about a year and a half of that is when I took my first trip to Gambia in 2008. And Kane put me in touch with the people that I went to study with because he had been there numerous times before me. So in 2008, I went for 3.5 months. In 2012, I was there for 6 weeks and about the same length in 2018. And the teachers that I worked with there were Moriba Kuyate, and he's the adopted son of my second teacher, the late Malamini Jabate, who passed away about a year after my second visit, I would say. And to introduce myself, I mean, this was still before the explosion of social media, so it was still a phone call for me at that time over there to introduce myself and to say I'm really interested in learning how to play Kora. And they told me that they were really excited that I was willing to come so far to learn their instrument, and that they would pick me up at the airport when I was ready and take me home. And they did just that, and I would say taught me anywhere between 4 and 8 hours of Kora a day while I was there. And their extended family that I lived with really took care of me like I was family. They fed me really well and just looked after me in every possible way you could think of. So I owe them a great deal for being able to share all of this with you. And that said, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity. So we're going to wrap up with one more song. I should let you know that I do have CDs available for sale. They're at the back table, kind of behind your left shoulder. They're $15, and I can take cash, check, or credit card. If you want to pay with cash or check, those can just go right into the briefcase. Otherwise, if you want to pay with credit card or some sort of digital payment that you might have, you can come up to me, and we can sort that out. To the right of the briefcase, there's an email list, and if you sign up for that, I'll let you know of the next time that'll be in the area for a performance. And that's the only reason that I use the list for, nothing else. So, and that said, I'd like to take a moment before this last song to give appreciation to Les and Bob, I think it was, who I worked with, for making this all possible. So thank you both. And this song is another one that I wrote more recently, within the last, I would say, 4 years, and it's called Smoky Mountain Sunset.